For years, Jackson Hole has been the go-to destination for big and wild skiing and riding. This resort is basically in the middle of nowhere, but it stands out with a uniquely Western vibe and a combination of snow quality, expert terrain, and mountain logistics that's hard to beat anywhere else. But is Jackson Hole the right mountain for everyone? Well, in this video, we'll go through Jackson Hole's overall mountain experience, and then we'll go through how the resort stacks up in our overall rankings. If you find this information helpful, be sure to like this video and hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. And if you want to see more exclusive tips on planning the ultimate ski trip, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all of which are linked in the description below. Enjoy! Located in western Wyoming, Jackson Hole offers more than 2,100 acres of terrain and a massive 4,139-foot vertical drop. The resort lies on the dramatic east end of the Teton mountain range, and its terrain generally gets more difficult as you go from right to left on the trail map. Unlike most other resorts, which tend to be more rolly, Jackson Hole slopes maintain notable pitches from top to bottom. Across the mountain, guests will find trails ranging from modestly sloped cruisers to precarious steeps, with a strong mix of below treeline trails, diverse glades, and high-alpine bowls. Let's get this out of the way. Jackson Hole is not for beginners. There are only 5 green trails on the entire mountain, and they're all located near the base. Jackson Hole has made some improvements in recent years and does have a dedicated learning area, but once you're off the bunny hill, there isn't much natural progression terrain from there. Jackson Hole isn't horrible for intermediates, but it really isn't a resort we'd recommend for this ability level either. There are some great groomed cruisers off the Casper and Aprés-ski chairs, but for the most part, Jackson Hole's blue trails are on the more difficult side, with many being ungroomed or fairly steep. Jackson Hole splits its intermediate ratings into blues and double blues, with double blues bridging the gap between low intermediate and advanced terrain. These double blues are among the steepest intermediate runs we've seen at any resort, and at any other mountain, they'd probably be reliably marked as blacks. Jackson Hole also isn't terrible for freestylers, but it's certainly not for those looking for a top-tier terrain park experience. The resort offers 2 traditional terrain parks consisting of jumps, rails, and boxes, as well as 4 stash areas consisting of unique natural features. These are pretty fun and make it clear that terrain parks are more than an afterthought at Jackson Hole, but many other resorts do deliver more, and more demanding, freestyle terrain. Those looking for a challenge, however, probably couldn't have come to a better place than Jackson Hole. Trails marked as black diamonds are perilously difficult. Cliffs, bumps, chutes, and steep blade runs abound. Sharp drop-offs that you'd expect to be closed anywhere else can be trails here. Double blacks on the mountain are so extreme that even the most tenured skiers will want to think twice before attempting them. The resort offers plenty of lines that will take you from top to bottom on continuous black diamond terrain. You can't really say this about any other North American resort with similar vertical. Visitors will want to hit the areas closest to the tram for the resort's most formidable terrain. The Thunder Chair is known for extremely demanding, cliff-riddled glade trails where it's frighteningly easy to find oneself unexpectedly overlooking huge drop-offs. The Sublet Chair provides access to precipitous chutes and amazing bowls. This includes hikeable access to the Headwall and Casper Bowl areas, both of which prove serious challenges but stand out for holding snow incredibly well. The lower elevation Hoback, lower Sublet, and Coulter areas, all of which can be accessed directly below the Sublet Chair, feature some of the resort's longest continuous expert runs. This vast swath of bowls, ridges, and gullies isn't that great at the beginning of the season, but once there's solid snow cover, these areas are home to some of the best lift-served powder skiing you can find anywhere. While northern areas are typically a bit more mellow, there are some steep blacks and enjoyable glades. The Teton area services some really enjoyable expert glades as well. Jackson Hole's uppermost advanced and expert runs can only be accessed by a full base to summit ride up the aerial tram. The terrain that most tram riding guests will hit is the Rendezvous Bowl, a steep but massive high-alpine bowl that holds powder well. But where the biggest thrill seekers will want to go is the famed Corbet's Couloir, an arduous, tantalizingly narrow couloir, with a massive drop-in of at least 10 feet, and a quick required turn from there. You've probably seen photos and videos online, but trust us, they do not do this insane run justice. Corbet's is subject to a decidedly variable opening schedule due to its hazardous nature, so be sure to check with Ski Patrol if you're looking to do it. But what's even more crazy about Jackson Hole is that Corbet's Couloir isn't even the resort's hardest run. A few yards to the skier's right of Corbet's is the absolutely mind-blowing S&S Couloir, a trail so extreme you'll have to sign a waiver with Ski Patrol to even do it. No other inbounds marked trail comes even close to S&S, which not only requires a staggering 50-foot mandatory drop, but a mandatory simultaneous rightward turn in the air to avoid hitting a massive rock wall. This run shouldn't even be attempted without perfect conditions and if you haven't done extensive mandatory drops before. In fact, this run is so tenuous that you could probably ski or ride here for your entire life without seeing a single person do it. All of Jackson Hole's remarkable terrain would not be possible without its world-class snow. Annual snowfall comes close to the best resorts in North America, and the resort sees consistent powder in most typical seasons. Early season conditions can be more variable, but it's common for the resort to open the vast majority of its terrain for the December holiday period, making it a rare dependable bet for a fly-to vacation during this time. There are some caveats to Jackson Hole's snow though. The resort has a massive vertical drop, so the snow conditions at higher elevations can often be quite different than those on lower runs. In addition, the snow here is typically a bit heavier than what you'd find in, say, Utah, so the powder does take some effort to ski or ride through. And finally, while uncommon, snow droughts can occur during bad seasons. With constant snow comes inclement weather conditions, and Jackson Hole often sees windy, snowy, and poor visibility conditions. These conditions typically have an outsized effect on higher elevation terrain here. Sometimes in the bowls, you won't even be able to see more than a few turns in front of you. At least on your uphill journey, the gondolas and tram do provide welcome isolation from the elements on days like this. Speaking of lifts, Jackson Hole's overall uphill infrastructure is thoroughly modern, with only a few exceptions. Most areas are served by high-speed chairlifts or gondolas. While the resort can get crowded, 2 gondolas, the tram, and a detachable quad do a good job of shuffling skiers and riders from the singular base area. The aerial tram is a defining feature of the resort, with first-class base-to-summit service over incredible ridges and valleys. But trams have inherent logistical shortcomings. The 2 tram cars run on 12-minute frequencies, and lines can even reach a few hours long on busy days. While Jackson Hole's summit can't be reached by any other lift, the resort does offer lift alternatives that make it easier to lap key tram-served areas. These include the recently upgraded Thunder high-speed quad, which finally brings lappable high-speed lift service to truly demanding terrain, and the fixed-grip sublet quad, which is still slow but isn't the longest ride in the world. In order to get to these chairs from the base without taking the tram first, guests can ride up the Bridger gondola. When it comes to getting around the resort in general, Jackson Hole is pretty easy to navigate, with very little catwalking required to get between different resort areas. Even the traverses out of the low elevation bowl and glade runs aren't that flat, although you will have to ride the slow Union Pass quad to get back to the base from the Hoback, Lower Sublet, and Coulter areas. The resort is pretty straightforward to figure out, but if you're unfamiliar with the mountain, the resort offers guided tours from the base at 9:30 a.m. every morning. Given the long vertical drop and difficult terrain, it takes a while to ski or ride to the bottom of the mountain from higher elevation areas. There are several on-mountain lodges where you can take a quick break or grab a meal without going all the way down to the base, ranging from casual grab-and-go cafeterias to full-service restaurants. Some of these lodges have phone charging booths, which can be really nice on cold days that drain your battery. And the Rendezvous Lodge, which is at the top of the Bridger gondola, has an outdoor patio that sometimes hosts parties. None of the major lodges are super proximate to the high elevation Thunder and Sublet chairs, although these 2 areas do provide bathroom facilities and benches if you need. If you want to take a moment for a breather before hitting Corbet's or S&S, there is a cabin at the top of the tram, and they're known for their waffles. Despite Jackson Hole's incredibly remote location, it's actually one of the easiest destination resorts to get to. The ski area is a quick 40-minute drive from the Jackson Hole Airport and approximately 20 minutes from downtown Jackson, and this is pretty much always the amount of time it takes to get there because there's no traffic. A number of transportation services, including taxis, shuttles, and ride-sharing companies, provide service to the resort. Flights are definitely on the pricier side, but provided you book well enough in advance, they aren't the worst in the world. If you happen to want a cheaper flight or live in a regional city, the resort is also within driving distance of Salt Lake City, which is about 5 hours away with no traffic. In addition, Boise and Denver are about 6 and 8 hour drives, respectively. Jackson Hole offers lodging options in 2 main places, on site and in the town of Jackson. Options on site range from the budget-friendly hostel to ultra-luxury suites. The town of Jackson gives you better bang for your buck, and if some in your party don't ski, staying in the town may be the more appealing option thanks to a great variety of food and culture. Jackson Hole offers a range of both free and paid parking options, but if you're not carpooling, the only free parking is in the Stilson lot, which is about a 7-mile bus ride from the resort. These shuttles tend to come every 10 to 15 minutes during peak times. Those carpooling with 3 or more guests can park in the ranch lot for free, which is less than half a mile from the village and a much shorter shuttle bus ride to the slopes. All of the directly slopeside parking costs at least $30 a day, assuming you arrive before 1 p.m. After that time, all of the lots are free. Jackson Hole may be in an incredibly remote location, but it boasts strong après-ski and nightlife experiences. The base area has multiple slopeside bars with awesome happy hour vibes and strong selections. Those looking for après should be sure not to miss downtown Jackson for a selection of high-quality Western saloons and bars. We'd personally say the best ones to hit are the Silver Dollar and the $1 Million Cowboy Bar, but we have to note that these can have covers. So Jackson Hole is definitely not for beginners, and maybe even some intermediates. But for experienced skiers and riders, it's well worth the trip. Some resorts may be bigger, but few can match Jackson Hole's snow quality, terrain diversity, and challenge. Lift tickets are incredibly expensive, with one-day adult rates going for as high as $235 as of the 2022-23 season. The resort may be a better value if you can afford the Icon Pass, which either offers 5 or 7 days at the mountain, but it's not on the base pass, meaning you're looking at a product that costs at least $1,000 for Jackson Hole access. The resort is also on the Mountain Collective Pass, but at $630 for 2 days of access at each partner resort, it's not cheap either. But while the cost of entry is steep, it's hard to beat the overall experience and workout one will get here. Now let's go through how Jackson Hole stacks up in our overall rankings, which are determined by the following 10 category mountain score. Jackson Hole consistently sees excellent, high-quality accumulation totals each winter and gets a 9 for snow. Jackson Hole can get cold, but it's hard to beat for snow preservation and terrain reliability. The most extreme terrain can of course be somewhat variable, but the resort still gets a 9 for resiliency. Jackson Hole claims a 2,500 acre footprint, and by our measurements, 2,130 of these acres are skiable, earning the resort a 7 for size. Jackson Hole's beginner and low intermediate options are limited, but it's hard to beat the variety for higher abilities, and the resort gets an 8 for terrain diversity. Jackson Hole boasts some of the hardest inbounds terrain in the world, with trails where you will truly kill yourself if you don't know what you're doing. The resort gets our highest score of 10 for challenge. Jackson Hole boasts a mostly high-speed lift fleet. It takes hiking to reach about 7% of Jackson Hole's terrain, and the resort gets a 7 for lifts. Jackson Hole can get pretty busy during peak times, and lines for the low-capacity tram are always an issue, but the resort is generally set up to manage traffic well, and it gets a 7 for crowd flow. Jackson Hole offers a number of options to stop in for a break, even if some of them may not be the most convenient to reach from every mountain area, and it gets a 7 for facilities. Jackson Hole may be big and tall, but it's pretty straightforward to get around and gets a 7 for navigation. And finally, mountain aesthetic. Jackson Hole's striking Teton vistas and remote location give it a notably distinctive character, and the resort gets a 9 in this category. These categories add up to an overall score of 80 as of summer 2023, placing Jackson Hole as our top peak in the Northern Rockies and 3rd overall in North America. Jackson Hole is a truly world-class mountain, and while it may not be great for less experienced guests, it excels in so many different areas and doesn't really fall short in any other notable way. Sure, if you're optimizing for a specific category like size, lift setup, or mountain aesthetic, some competitors may be slightly better, but as an overall package, it's really hard to beat Jackson Hole. For more information on Jackson Hole and over 80 North American destination ski resorts, check out peakrankings.com. See you for the next one.